Welcome to Leader Talks podcast. I'm Reverend Dr. Shannon Karafanda. I am an ordained clergy person in the United Methodist Church.
Hi, I'm Elaine Robinson Beattie, speaker, trainer, executive coach.
We've put together this podcast by women, for women, about things we wish we had known when we were younger.
And we do hope that you will look for our podcast on your favorite platform.
Be sure to subscribe, to like, and to share. We want to thank you for joining us today.
So Shannon, you ready to get started?
Let's do it. Hey friends, welcome back to Leader Talks, a podcast by women and for women about things we wish we knew when we were younger. I'm Reverend Dr. Shannon Karafanda, an ordained pastor in the United Methodist Church, here with my esteemed and wonderful and lovely and brilliant co-host, Elaine. Elaine, how are you today?
I am doing well. I am excited about, as always, just being together with you. And for those of you who have not met me, I am a speaker, executive coach, and trainer. I like to say that I work with organizations who are looking to increase their pipeline, to strengthen it. And when we work with the leaders, they are, number one, increasing their resilience. They are increasing their readiness. And obviously, for the organizations, they are able to retain these awesome people. So that's my focus. So Shannon, we've done a couple of episodes, and today, can we talk about strategy?
I would love to talk about strategy. I find the topic fascinating. I think I'm wired for it. There's a test that I think his last name is McCowan does and says, you're one of these 4 types of thinkers. It's another type of personality test, but it's really sort of how you present in the organization. And I'm a synergist strategist.
I love that. So before you get started,
Yeah.
and I do, questions come up like, they're flowing around in my head. So here's my question for you, though. And we always talk to our, if you would, younger sisters, right?
Yes.
In the workplace. So my question for you is, what do you wish you knew around strategy coming up in the ranks of leadership? And for you, it's both it's in the workplace, but it's both in the marketplace and in church, correct?
Yes. I wish I knew certain frameworks and strategies when I was in my 20s. I knew a little bit about one of them, but I didn't know the framework to give language to it. I'm going to present a few different ones. You can use them individually, but I think they're best when paired together. And you'll kind of see what I mean as I go through them. The first one is one that Simon Sinek talked about, start with why. This is something that, well, you know me, Elaine. We hop on a call together. I'm like, all right, so here's what we're going to do first, second, and third, and then we're going to go to that. And you're like, how are you? Are you okay? Is your family fine? Because I am very task oriented. So I don't forget my why, but I always tend to put it secondary and it should be primary. And I wish someone had stopped me sooner and said, why are you doing this? Even if I was still doing it for the right reasons, at least having that sense to articulate why I'm doing what I'm doing. And he talks about the golden circle. He says, you start with your why. That sort of drives everything. And you can see this in faith. In a faith perspective, my why could be love, or it could be a personal relationship with Jesus. It could be the transformation that's happened in my life. There's probably something very specific for each person, but it's going to center around one of those. And then going out from that, you have the how. Well, how do I do that? How do I love people? And then the what? Well, how do I love people? I make sure that we have good discipleship and evangelism. My why, if I am, Simon Sinek uses the example of Apple, their why is to make life streamlined and sleek. And, they describe a feeling more than a product. And how they do that, they make products that embody that and that are better than anything else. What do? Well, they do phones, they do computers, a whole host of other things. And so for me, reminding myself of my why, and then looking at, well, how do I do that gives me a framework for almost anything. And then the what is very situational. Like, oh, in this season of life, I'm going to be focusing on podcasting because that is something that excites me. So, my why is love, but how I do that is using innovation and communication in various technological ways, but also in person. And then right now, what is the podcast, but also my local church and the things that I do there. And I'm doing a podcast for my local church. So all of those things sort of mix together in that golden circle. And even though I think I knew that really early on, I'll give you an example. One of my first appointments after being commissioned in ministry, I was working with another pastor. He was the senior pastor. I was the associate, and we were launching a new church. And we were meeting regularly every day. We had a lot of big plans. And the why for that church was servant evangelism. We're going to serve people. We're going to love people. We're going to do A-OK projects because acts of kindness are A-OK. It was cheesy, but it was wonderful. It was fun. We loved it. 1 week before we were going to launch, he passed away suddenly. And I remember thinking, it's over. My job must be over. And my friend group must not be together anymore because of the leader. And someone who was part of the United Methodist Conference said, hold on a second. This wasn't about Alan. This was about Jesus. Why can't you launch this church? I'm like, you know what? He's right. So I remember sitting with our launch team in the church office and everyone's grieving and mourning. And I took the big sticky notes and put them all over the wall. And I remember thinking, okay, what are the big things we need to do for the launch? Who's going to do them? What's the timeline? Where are the resources we can get them? And in my mind back then, it was just, this is the strategy. What's going to happen when and who's going to do it? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. But the why and the how were not verbalized. And I think in that moment, I think it was because of that person, it was Parks Davis. He said, this wasn't about Alan. He reminded me of my why. And now that I have that framework, I could say, okay, when I'm frustrated with something, if it's not working right, what's the why? Let's tweak the how and the what. Because that's a lot of times why it's not working.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. You really brought up several things, and I'm just going to ask you a couple. But you mentioned, first of all, just framework. Why are frameworks important? Why are frameworks important, Shannon? And I love that.
Yeah, I think our brains like the clarity that they bring. It likes to we like to put things into categories. We like to label things. Even when we push back, I'm one that tends to push back, like, don't label me, but also you're right. So it's okay that you label me. Like, we like that. Our brains like that clarity. Even if we push on them, we like them. We want to see if they hold. And if it doesn't hold, then that tells us something else as well. But I think a framework kind of gives us that space, like, I'm going to do all I can in this space, in this why, with this how, and this what. And if it doesn't work, then maybe one of those needs to be tweaked.
I was at a conference just this past weekend, and also just finished creating an online course, management training course. And in that, this weekend and with my course, the conversation of frameworks came up like often. And what I know, and I'm going to ask you if you find this to be true too, is that frameworks help us to be consistent, right? And it helps people to remember, right? The process, right? There's always a process. And if we're successful, we have created a process that will help us to repeat it, and get the similar results. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, we're just kind of floating out there in chaos, but it sort of brings us back. And when it works, it gives you that, we'll just repeat that process. So let me go to another framework, because I do think all of these are scalable. And I think that's really, really important. So this one I heard recently on a podcast, The Diary of a CEO, and they call it I've heard it called a couple different things. I've heard it called signal and noise, and I've also heard it called the 80-20 rule, but the 80-20 rule in church is different than this 80-20 rule. In church, that means 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. That's not this rule. This rule is 80% of what you do should be laser focused on your goal and your mission. 20% won't be, and that's fine. but 80% should be laser focused. The other way to describe this is that the signal that you're putting out should be the main signal. And if the noise that's not what you're focused on gets to be above 20%, you start to lose that focus and your results will suffer. If you're putting out a signal on the radio and 80% of it is going to the specific dial on your radio, then you're going to hear it pretty clearly. You might get some static, but you'll hear most of it. If it's 60-40, you're going to strain to hear that. You're not going to hear it, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to change the channel. And so what this person said was, what are the 3 things? And when we think strategy, let me back up. When we think strategy, we think long term. That's how I always think of strategy. And I think it is important to think long term, but most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. I think it's important to be mindful of that. And this signal and noise framework says, what are the 3 things you have to do today to move forward with your mission?
Definitely.
And you talked about this in the book, The One Thing. Like, what's the thing today? If you get it done today, you've moved the needle just a little bit. And
Absolutely.
and it may
They
be the
all go
same thing.
together. They
Yeah.
all go together.
Yeah, together. It may be the same thing multiple days in a row. It may be 3 things that are business oriented 3 days in a row. And then the 4th day is family. Not that you're ignoring your family on the other 3 days. That's why that 20% is in there. You have to make sure, you're trying to balance life. But I always thought I have to, here's my to-do list and I'm going to check them off. But do you remember the Franklin planners?
Of course.
I had a
I
Franklin planner.
couldn't live without it.
Loved mine, like rings,
did too.
and you put the pages in,
Yes.
and I loved mine. And I never, when I was younger, this is what I wish I knew. The method they taught does work.
Absolutely.
I started the method and was like, this is a lot of work. I'm having to categorize my to-do list.
Right.
I don't like that. But really, this rule, this framework is the same as those Franklin planners. What are the 3 things you got to get done today? That's A1, A2, A3.
Right.
If you have more time, here's B1, B2, B3, and the others are, I don't need to do them today. I mean, they're there because I have to do them eventually, but I don't need to do them today.
And again, going back to, I think we were talking about time and energy management, it's just making sure that we block the time to ensure that we get those priorities done.
Yeah. When is your most productive energy time? Put your top 3 things in that time. And so for me, sermon writing is always number 1 for the week.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's number 1 every day, but it's number 1 a lot of days. Now, I do my best sermon writing in the morning, but I do my best sermon practicing in the late afternoon.
Interesting.
So I will do research and writing in the morning, and the afternoon is tweaking where something might go in the sermon or how I'm going to illustrate this physically. Am I going to, I'm going to use my hands this way? Am I going to have an illustration here? Those types of things are more afternoon. And that kind of brings me to one of the other frameworks. This is extending the strategy. I think evaluating everything you do is part of your strategy. So I do a sermon and I think, okay, what went well? What went wrong? And where did I see God in this?
Right.
And that's for me personally, but I think for programs, it's the same way. We finish a vacation Bible school. What went well? What went wrong? Was there anything like missing or confusing? And documenting it so that the next time you do it, you're starting from a higher level. You're leveling up already. And so that evaluation kind of helps you, okay, maybe that strategy didn't work 100% this time.
Right.
But let's evaluate why and make changes for the next time that we do this.
For the fact that we want to find out what lessons did we learn, right? Like, what lessons did we learn? Unfortunately, I in my younger years, I'd always ask like, well, why did this happen? Why did it happen? And it sounded like I was going after someone, and that, but that was the question that came up, right?
Yeah. No, for me was, it didn't work, so I'm not good at that because I didn't have a growth mindset.
Right.
And yeah, having that evaluation, I think, is key. And then two other frameworks, and these are more for planning and brainstorming. I love a good SWOT analysis.
Love them. It's so simple. So simple.
And I've used it at 3 different churches now, and it has worked pretty well. What are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats? And what I like to do is to layer that. What are my personal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? What are the church's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And then what is the community strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats?
I like that.
And
That.
the intersection of those 3 will tell you what you need to be doing next. And it's different for every single church. I might have the same strengths and weaknesses at every church I go to, but they have their own that's unique. The community around it has its own, and the community changes as things progress. And so every so many years, you sort of need to look at it again like, oh, there's a whole new industry that has moved into the community. And so what are we going to do differently because of that? I love a SWOT analysis.
I know, I do. I do as well. And you, Shannon, you talk about strategies. You reminded me of just a real, again, a very simple strategy and a way to just look at complex situations. Beth Chrisman, I don't know if you know Beth Chrisman. Oh my gosh, her and her husband, Kelly, they are just amazing organizational development consultants, but they're pastors, right? You know what I say? And sorry, not but, and they're pastors. And she's a DS in the North Carolina conference. Real simple triangle, right? Passions, gifts, needs. Boom, right?
Oh,
Like
that's a good one. Yeah. That's easy. That's easy.
easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have another one, and this one's a lot more complex, but I think could be helpful in sort of broadening the idea of strategy. And this sort of takes in that SWOT analysis from 3 different angles, but it's called the McKinsey 7 model.
New for me. Okay, I don't know.
Yeah. So obviously, all the words are S's. The first 3 are looking kind of big picture strategy, structure, and systems.
Yep.
What's the strategy that we're going in with, but what are the systems that are already in place or that
Yep.
need to be in place? What's the structure that we have around that? So in the church, I can't change some of the structure. Like it's set, can't change it. So what systems need to be in place to account for that given the strategy that we're looking at? And then the next level are all things pertaining to culture. So it's things like shared values and skills that we have and style that we might have. What's the aesthetic that we might project? And who are the staff that we have? All of those are a component of culture. And many, many leaders will say everything rises and falls on culture. I think culture is a key component in any leadership process. And I had no idea what culture. I knew the term culture, but culture in an organization had no idea what that was when I was younger.
And I want to interject here because 2 things that you said earlier, and I was going to ask you about this. Would you agree that as we talk about, and this is going back to, your first one when you talked about Simon Sinek's why, doesn't that really also highlight the values that we have, right? Really
I
set around
I do
values.
think that golden circle intersects with this quite a bit. Yeah, the values, the style, how is probably your skills, maybe also your style, but your systems and your structure.
Mhm.
And then the what is, your staff and your maybe
What
skills or your product.
resources do you have,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And then I think all of that is part of a strategy
And then to go back, because I know both of us use disc, wouldn't you say that the disc style has a lot to do with
with culture.
exactly.
Yeah, I like to do a team report when I'm
Oh,
working somewhere and to say, "Oh, we got a lot of D's.
well, let
We
me
got
tell
we
you.
gotta we gotta fix it. We have no C's. We gotta hire someone that knows how to do spreadsheets."
I was in a church and the entire team were eyes, okay? Now
Ooh,
yeah, now you know.
sunshine
Okay, so
and rainbows.
yeah, 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 we were, fun, the party people, like, "Let's do this." Meanwhile, as you know, and I'm sure you know this, that a lot of the people who attend church are really, like,
S
the
is
steadiness,
mm,
the S style people. So the I's and S were literally
right.
freaking out the people, right? So, yeah, so I did that for the team and it was so eye-opening, right?
Yeah.
So to Shannon's point, to Reverend Shannon's point, we really, really need to be aware of, again, not only the shared values, but the style in which we approach the
Mhm.
strategy, right? And then again, what the resources we have regarding staff. What were the last three? Did
Which
you say three? Did you say six?
so we had 3 at the very beginning, strategy, structure, systems, and then there were 4 for culture, shared values, skills, style, and staff.
Skills. Okay. That's
Mhm.
what I meant. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And
Nine.
I think, this profile can be a strategy for communication. So I use try to use it in sermons. Like, here's the one thing you need to know. That's the D. Here's what happened in the Bible that inspired someone to do that. Here's why God loves you. Like, there's
Mhm.
always that in there.
Mhm.
And then, like, here's what the data says about
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
do this, how it will
Yeah.
change your life. I try to do that in all of my sermons because it's hitting different people. It's not just one style. Is the I comes out. Like, that's
You can't help it.
and then secondarily, the D as well. So I really do have to do some of that research to find like, okay, what are the bullet points for the, what will happen to you if you do this? People need some of that research. And I think my daughter did debate in elementary school, which was kind of funny to see elementary students doing debate. But, they used that, what is that old? It's an old framework. It was, you need to have what people are feeling, you need to have the research behind it, the cerebral part of it, and then, what's the takeaway? And those were kind of the 3 things that they looked at. And you could hear them clicking off in their brains as they talked about this debate. And they were coached by their debate instructor to, stand this way and make sure you emphasize the right things. And so my daughter did a debate on cloud seeding. Do you know
Mm.
about cloud seeding? I did not know about cloud
Mm.
seeding till I went to the
Mm.
debate. It's where you can put things up into clouds and either make it rain or push the clouds away so the rain will go elsewhere. And I think she was on the anti-cloud seeding. And so she got up there, and so we should not use cloud seeding. And then the next person got up and they were pro, and they were like, and that's why we should use like they all this was like their move. Oh, it was great though. So good. So good.
Mm.
Elaine, what advice would you say, just like overall about strategy to someone who's just starting out?
Well, first of all, just understanding the importance of strategy and pick one that works with your style, that's comfortable for you. Every organization is going to be different. So, we can't just say, okay, this is my favorite and we're just going to use that. I would say that it is critical because it does help us to walk people through a process. People need to
Mhm.
have steps. They need things to be simple because when we're particularly trying to navigate and facilitate change,
Yeah.
particularly if you tell people the framework, they can anticipate at least what the next step is in the process. So they have something to hold on to.
Yeah, I would say a good framework is like the foul lines in baseball. It's just like, yeah, the ball might go over there, but we're not going to count it unless
Right.
it's kind of in here. And I would add, just to kind of close this out, that as you get older and wiser in your leadership, that the way you use these frameworks needs to scale as you move up in an organization. For example, I worked for a senior pastor, heart of gold, loved people, he excelled at pastoral care. And he came into our church, which was larger than the one that he had previously. And there were multiple pastors on staff, and we would send out a text, hey, so and so's in the hospital. He would be in the car on the way to the hospital before anyone could blink. And it was hard for us to say this to him because we knew how much he loved it. We had to say, that doesn't scale. You can't do
Yeah.
that every time because there's too many people and you'll burn out. Maybe you can take, and so then we looked at our systems. What can we change in our
Yeah.
system to accommodate his gifts, but also to make sure that he's not going to burn out? So does that mean he takes a week at a time, or does he take Mondays every week? Or does he say, hey, maybe it's time for me to be in a different season and learn different skills? And so one of the other pastors is going to take all the pastoral care. It was interesting to just watch that. And I used the term scalable a few times, and he was like, I'm tired of hearing that word.
It's essential. Frameworks, lead to, underscore the strategy, which absolutely allows us to scale up, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a system. It's a systematic way of approaching, issues, problems, challenges, new ways of doing things. So very, very critical.
Yeah.
Very critical.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun as always, Elaine. And
Absolutely.
I want to let everyone know, please like, share, and subscribe because we really want to make sure that this gets to the right people at the right time. And we will do everything in our power to make sure we're giving you good content.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Shannon. We appreciate you and all that you bring.
Thank you.